Well, today is kind of a short update and a short day. Got the booster and the master cylinder out. I'm not actually going to take those home because those are going to be used on the Touring S52 Turbo swap. I still need the same swap booster on a right-hand drive because the booster is still on the left side of the car. They use a really weird system of linkages, and it actually has a crossbar and another linkage that comes out here to run the booster on that side. So we got a lot of the interior taken out. My buddy John took out some sheet metal in a couple areas. He also took out the rear partition metal piece and took the tan rear seat back because that was his. I also took the trains and transfer case off of the engine. So that's sitting on its own now. The clutch actually looks pretty good. Flywheel looks excellent. So I think we were just probably at the torque limit of the clutch. It's just slipping because it didn't have any more bite. So there is the entire manual trans and transaxle setup from an iX. Pretty intense. It weighs a lot as it turns out. Funny, right? This white powder is actually that fire extinguisher, which rolled around enough where it partially discharged in the trunk, so that's cool. I still have to take the front brakes, the calipers off of the uprights. Subframe's out. The steering rack actually feels totally okay, so I think all that binding you guys heard me belly aching about in the videos over the winter was actually the steering coupler, which was totally shot. Control arms feel good. Those were kind of a bitch to get out. Decent enough parcel shelf. Good door cards. So this car definitely had some worth. Here's the steering coupler. On an iX, it's unique. It's a double U-joint. On a standard e30, it's a single U-joint. This thing, if you spin it, like, you can't even push it by hand. It's so bound up right now. So unfortunate. It's kind of an expensive piece, but I have enough extras where I still have them if somebody needs one. Haven't really done much to the S52. Just took the harness off and set it aside. Ooh, sweet. You'll notice this is no longer a shiny new turbo. This is the Unicorn turbo. I'm using it because it's been balanced. I'm expecting to have a little bit better longevity with this turbo. It's been good so far, so I'm assuming it will still hold up at similar boost pressures. I'm probably going to be running, I don't know, 15 to 18 psi on this engine, so we'll see. It's a lot more volume than it was doing before, but same pressure, so we will see. Like I said, pop out windows with hardware, although there's the hardware. So if you know anybody looking for a set of coupe pop-out windows for an e30, hit me up. Got lots of gauges to put in. I got lots of fun stuff for that touring. Whole box of AN. I don't know. It's gonna be a fun project, but I still got. I mean, this car is mostly parted out now. I got the Fiat full of stuff to bring to my storage unit, but I still have to take the entire rear end out of this car, whole subframe, LSD. I did take the rear bumper off, but I still have to get the shocks off. The fuel tank's actually in decent shape, other than, you know, being dinged in like they all are on both sides from people jacking them up in the wrong spot. So that's got to come out. I don't know. Probably still, if I have a productive night, one night, but realistically probably 2 nights left on this thing. So we will see. Probably midweek I'll try to get this thing completely cut up and taken in. But I figured I'd at least give you guys an update, since the E30 videos are a favorite of some. When I'm not making Mercedes content, these seem to be second best. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but that's what I'm working on today. So it's not actually going to be a video about the touring. Sorry. Today, after the noisy garage door closes, today is about the Unicorn, the iX. I have it completely taken apart now, basically. Got to break down the rear subframe. I got to cut it a few more times, but by the end of tonight, it'll all be in the trailer, destined and bound for scrap. So I still have to take the fuel tank out of it, but it still has fuel in it at this point. We were smart this time, and we cut the front and rear off the car so we could still use it on the lift in the meantime. cut the front clip off. Kind of a bummer to throw it away because it's actually got rust-free strut towers, and IX front clips are a little tough to find these days. But we do what has to be done. Bottle caps from the Touring. You ever wondering what the middle section of an E30 looks like? There you go. And some corn. I guess they still have sun visors in there. Gotta take those off too. And that visor panel's actually not too bad. A little roughed up, but not too bad. But anyway, yeah, fuel tank, that still has to come out. It's a little dinged up, but it didn't leak. And that's actually pretty tough to find these days, as it turns out, so we'll see. Well, the IX is no more. I just got back from the scrapyard and she's gone for good. This car probably coming in next. The clutch hydraulics stopped working, so now when I start the car with the clutch in, it's in gear and it's going, so it's kind of terrifying to drive. But I think it's just a slave cylinder. Generally those fail first. You almost always do hydraulics in pairs, but since that's all getting ripped out anyway, when I do the turbo S52, I'm just gonna try to limp it along here. So I'm gonna clean up the garage a little bit, get rid of a couple of those IX parts, put them on my trailer so they're ready to go home, and then bring this car inside and see what's what. Now it's time to have a little more fun. Got everything all cleaned up enough where I could at least get the car back in here. Now I'm just remembering though that I forgot the key over here on that bench. I know it's the car from Britain because it's got the Big Ben and the, or I guess House of Parliament, not Big Ben. Big Ben's the bell inside of that. Let's see here. I had to leave this thing outside a couple nights ago because I was out here working and the power went out. So I couldn't get the car back inside. But luckily the power locks work. And I'm gonna put the clutch all the way in, pop it in reverse. As you can see, we are removing clutches all the way in. Try to pump it. Oh, that's right. YouTube doesn't like when I have the radio on. Oh shoot! All right, I have to shut it off. Put it in first. I have to start it back up. And I have to drive in first gear. Oh, this is super sketchy. I do not like this at all. Jank it out of first gear. All right. While she's in, I did not crash into anything. Oh, whoops. Did that whole thing with the parking brake on. I'm smart. So I'm gonna pop it up in the air and change out that clutch slave. I'm probably gonna pop the hood real quick just to see how much brake fluid's in it. Doing a clutch slave cylinder generally will take quite a bit of fluid. What I'll probably end up doing is take the existing slave off, let it drain all the way down because the fluid in there is disgusting. And then once that's done, I'll put the new slave on, drop it back down, add fluid, clean fluid, pardon, then go back under and gravity bleed it and see how that goes. So I popped the hood to check the clutch fluid level and I had a little brain fart. I'm like, why is the feed hose for the clutch line not even clipped on this car? Then I'm like, oh yeah, right-hand drive has its own reservoir, so that'll be perfect. I'll just let that completely bleed down under the car, put the new used slave on it. I'm going to use the one out of the Unicorn because that's what I've got here. It worked fine. It's clearly not original and it's free. So I'm going to put that on there and then I'm going to gravity bleed it. I've got a video on how I typically do that. You guys should watch that if you're at all curious. But yeah, it's really no frills. It's just kind of making sure that the bleeder on the clutch slave is at the highest possible point when you cycle the fluid. So I'm gonna go up the rest of the way here and we'll go take a look at it. So I've actually never been onto this car before. Looks in shockingly good condition. Not even much in the way of fluid leaks. You can see it's a factory non-catalyst car. The rear exhaust muffler is, well, let's just say it's not in use currently. And people have done some top-notch fixes to this in the past, it looks like. I should see if I have a spare muffler. I've got that nice shiny MagnaFlow, but I'm gonna try to keep this car sleeper with a single tip, so probably won't end up going with that. Very open differential, small case. And yeah, Getrag 240. I love how easy it is to get at everything on these cars. Changing a sleeve on this thing is probably gonna take like 20 minutes. The pan gasket doesn't even leak. There's no way in hell this car has 200,000 miles on it. This is definitely low hundreds. One of my subscribers was kind enough to send me all the MOT records on this car from Wales, where the car originally was from. And it showed incorrect mileage basically. So when I got it, it read about 60,000 miles more in about a year. So that and the fact the tachometer doesn't read correctly means it's got a 6-cylinder tachometer in it. Oh yeah, I should see how hard this brake caliper is seized. Not at all currently. All right. Interesting. Cars just need to be driven. So yeah, I'm gonna take my 13 mil with the U-joint. I'm gonna zip the 2 bolts off that sleeve, take it off, and then get a catch can for some fluid that's gonna come out, but we'll get going on this. So it was definitely a slave cylinder failure. You can see it's leaking out the front seal. That's actually kind of uncommon for how they leak, and that would explain the only leak I see on the car is out of the transmission bell housing, which is brake fluid. So already making a mess, which is stupid, but that should mean changing this one part and I'll be able to drive this silly car again. So I'm gonna grab my 11mm flare wrench, zip this line off, and replace the sleeve here. So I've got the replacement cylinder bolted on. I've got the bleeder cracked open now. My secret for bleeding these slave cylinders is hold the actuator in the palm of your hand so you can compress it. Hold the bleed screw completely vertical, and then once you've got the bleed screw open and you've got a trickle of fluid coming out on its own, squeeze the piston in as hard as you can, and then before the piston fully goes into the slave cylinder, before it stops, close the bleeder, and then release the piston with your hand. What that's doing is it's forcing air and the dirty fluid out of the bleeder, and then before it stops forcing entirely and potentially cavitate or get air, you're closing the bleeder, and then when you release the piston, it's sucking fresh fluid down the hose into the cylinder. So that's what I'm gonna do next. This, I'm a loner, I don't have friends, so like this is super convenient for, especially if you're out in the garage late at night or something, don't have a friend help you bleed a clutch. This works really, really well, I've found. So that's my little tip. So I ran out of brake fluid. I got the new slave in and I got it bled, and then I got an air pocket. That's because there's just not enough fluid in that reservoir. So unfortunately, we are on pause until I can get more brake fluid for this thing, but at least the solution has been identified. Still have to kind of take this thing apart a little more too. Still has the front differential on it. This is the motor out of the Turbo Unicorn IX. Then I got to get it mounted on a stand, take the exhaust manifold off. Still work to do here too. It's on my Ferrari engine cart, and I'm gonna probably need that here in a couple of weeks. So, shoot, wish I hadn't run out of brake fluid, but can never plan for everything. I'm actually gonna take this to a buddy of mine to have it detailed later today. So, Fiat is parked. It's a lovely day. So why not?